a relentless torrent has descended upon Los Angeles, transforming what should be a season of festive joy into an agonizing fight for survival. Across America, families gather for Christmas celebrations, but for millions of Californians, this holiday has become a chilling nightmare. What began as routine weather advisories quickly escalated into one of the most dangerous natural disasters Southern California has endured during the holiday season in decades, catching many unprepared and forcing a dramatic reevaluation of preparedness in an era of escalating climate volatility. The timing could not have been more cruelly precise. A colossal atmospheric river, often described as an aerial fire hose of moisture stretching thousands of miles across the vast Pacific Ocean, chose Christmas week to unleash its unbridled fury. This region, already scarred by the recent devastating wildfires, now faced an entirely different kind of inferno. This wasn't merely rain. This was a perfect storm, a malevolent convergence of multiple deadly elements that is fundamentally rewriting the definition of a holiday emergency, pushing emergency services to breaking point and testing the resilience of entire communities. Tuesday night marked the terrifying genesis of what meteorologists are now grimly labeling an unprecedented weather assault. At approximately 9:00 p.m. Pacific time, the first wave of the storm, a precursor to the true devastation, slammed into Santa Barbara. The rainfall rates recorded were so intense, so far beyond typical projections, that they stunned even veteran weather experts. Within a mere handful of hours, the system, gaining terrifying momentum and scale, surged relentlessly southward. By the stroke of midnight, Los Angeles, the beating heart of Southern California, found itself under full, suffocating siege. The rain did not simply fall. It hammered the sprawling metropolis with an almost malicious force. Streets, once thoroughfares of bustling holiday traffic, instantaneously became raging rivers, their currents powerful enough to sweep away vehicles and even small structures. Hillsides, already denuded by previous wildfires, succumbed under the immense pressure, collapsing into violent avalanches of mud, rock, and the very debris of human habitation. Entire neighborhoods, once picturesque and serene, transformed in minutes into treacherous flood zones, leaving residents trapped in their homes, panicked, and scrambling desperately to escape the rapidly rising, often contaminated, waters. The sheer scale of this unfolding tragedy is truly terrifying. Southern California is now receiving what would normally constitute several months' worth of rainfall, an entire season's precipitation, in less than 24 hours. In some areas, rainfall totals have already surpassed a staggering 9 inches, a stark contrast to the typical December total of a mere 2 to 3 inches. This is not a gradual accumulation. This is a sudden, overwhelming deluge, an environmental shockwave hitting a landscape fundamentally unprepared to absorb such an onslaught. The consequences, both immediate and long-term, are catastrophic. The National Weather Prediction Center issued a Level 4 high-risk warning, their highest possible alert, underscoring the extreme peril. This designation is incredibly rare, appearing on only about 4% of days throughout the entire year. Yet, historical data reveals that these rare days account for roughly 1/3 of all flood-related deaths and nearly 80% of total flood damage nationwide. When meteorologists resort to their most extreme warning language, it is a clear, unambiguous signal that the situation has crossed a critical threshold, plunging into life-threatening territory where every decision carries immense weight and the margin for error is razor-thin. And this is where the story takes an even darker, more insidious turn. Earlier this year, the devastating Palisades and Eaton wildfires tore through vast, ecologically vital areas of Southern California. What they left behind are grim environmental wounds known as burn scars, landscapes so intensely heated by the inferno that the very soil itself has been chemically altered. The ground becomes hardened, almost vitrified, practically waterproof, rendering it utterly incapable of absorbing rainfall. These burn scars have effectively transformed entire hillsides into massive, accelerated water slides, each one a conduit for destruction. Instead of soaking benignly into the earth, rainwater races downhill at terrifying, unchecked speeds, carrying with it a destructive payload of mud, boulders, uprooted trees, and the remnants of infrastructure with incredible, unstoppable force. Cars, homes, and tragically human lives can be swept away in a matter of seconds. The physics are brutally simple, yet devastatingly effective. Healthy soil acts like a sponge, absorbing water and slowing runoff, protecting the landscape. Burned soil, by contrast, repels water like concrete, turning gentle slopes into lethal chutes. When rain falls at rates exceeding 1 inch per hour, which is precisely what's happening across affected areas, there is nowhere for the water to go but sideways and, inevitably, downhill, straight into vulnerable communities.
Confirmed.
Los Angeles police officers spent the preceding Tuesday engaged in the desperate, agonizing work of going door to door in the most vulnerable neighborhoods. These were not routine advisories, they were urgent, personal warnings to residents that staying behind could mean certain death. These were desperate, last-ditch attempts to save lives before conditions deteriorated beyond reach, a testament to the gravity of the situation.
As more rain falls
Evacuation
on
warnings now cover vast swathes of land impacted by the Palisades, Sunset, and Hearst fire zones, with authorities extending the danger period through Thursday night, acknowledging the prolonged and unpredictable threat. The human toll of this disaster is already heartbreakingly clear. Families who had meticulously planned joyous Christmas gatherings are instead fleeing their homes, grabbing whatever meager possessions they can carry, their holiday dreams shattered. Children who should be excitedly opening presents are instead watching their parents frantically load emergency supplies into cars, their innocence prematurely replaced by fear. Airports, usually bustling with holiday cheer, have descended into chaos as flights are canceled en masse, stranding thousands of travelers and disrupting global supply chains. Highways, typically packed with festive holiday traffic, have become treacherous death traps where visibility drops to absolute zero in an instant, and flash floods appear without warning, turning asphalt into torrents. As if the relentless flooding were not enough, hurricane-force winds are simultaneously battering the state, compounding the devastation. In mountain regions, gusts have exceeded a staggering 70 miles per hour, powerful enough to topple century-old trees, snap sturdy power lines, and transform everyday debris into deadly, high-speed projectiles. Even coastal cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego are experiencing gusts near 50 miles per hour, making driving nearly impossible and knocking down high-profile vehicles with alarming regularity. Across California, reports are mounting of destroyed infrastructure and a growing number of casualties. Tragically, at least 17 people are confirmed dead statewide as the combined forces of flooding and wind tear through communities, leaving a trail of sorrow. The entire state, from its northern reaches to its southern border, is now under a suffocating blanket of flood watches or warnings. The electrical power grids are failing under the strain as relentless wind and water take down transmission lines and short-circuit critical transformers. Thousands of homes are already without electricity, plunging families into darkness during what should be one of the brightest, most comforting times of the year. Cell towers, the very backbone of modern communication, struggle to remain online as backup systems fail, cutting off communication precisely when people need it most, isolating them from loved ones and emergency services.
A wind advisory is also in effect until 10
Meteorologists
p.m.
describe this
Communities most at
event
risk
as a
include those near
compound
creeks.
disaster, a chilling confluence of multiple hazards striking simultaneously, creating devastation far worse than any single threat could achieve alone. The rain alone would be dangerous, the wind alone would be destructive, and the burn scars alone create extreme vulnerability. But together, they form a catastrophic chain reaction that overwhelms every defense system California has painstakingly put in place. This complex interaction highlights the systemic risks faced by modern societies in an era of rapid climate change. Governor Gavin Newsom has swiftly mobilized the state's full emergency response, a massive undertaking. The California National Guard stands ready, their rescue helicopters and high-water vehicles poised for deployment into the most treacherous zones. Emergency shelters are opening across the region, though many are already nearing capacity, a testament to the scale of displacement. First responders, the frontline heroes, are being strategically prepositioned, knowing that once conditions worsen further, reaching victims may become an impossible, deadly endeavor. The economic toll of this disaster is already climbing into the billions of dollars, a brutal blow to the state's powerful economy, which is the fifth largest in the world. Holiday shopping, the lifeblood of countless small businesses and a crucial economic driver, has come to a grinding halt, with storefronts shuttered and consumers sheltering in place. Restaurants that meticulously prepared for bustling Christmas dinner crowds are instead boarding up windows, their culinary investments and holiday profits vanishing. Hotels that should be full of visiting families are evacuating guests, turning festive stays into hurried escapes. The ripple effects of these immediate losses will be felt for months, even years, as businesses struggle desperately to recover earnings during their most important financial season.
On-ramp was flooded.
Insurance companies, already reeling from previous disasters, face an unprecedented wave of claims, potentially leading to increased premiums and even market exits in the long term for a state increasingly defined by climatic extremes. Beyond the immediate crisis, a more troubling reality looms large. This catastrophe is not an isolated incident, but a stark manifestation of what climate scientists have long termed the new normal. California's weather patterns have become increasingly extreme, swinging violently and unpredictably between prolonged periods of devastating drought and sudden, overwhelming deluges. This dangerous volatility creates a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle of destruction. Extended droughts allow vegetation to grow dense and dry, transforming the landscape into an enormous tinderbox, fueling massive, uncontrollable wildfires. These fires, in turn, leave behind the treacherous burn scars, fundamentally altering the soil's composition. Then, with an almost preternatural regularity, atmospheric rivers arrive, transforming those very same burn scars into deadly, accelerated flood zones, unleashing mudslides and flash floods with devastating efficiency. Each disaster, rather than being a standalone event, tragically sets the stage for the next, locking California into an escalating spiral of environmental trauma. Climate scientists, for years, have issued dire warnings about this exact scenario. Their research unequivocally indicates that warmer ocean temperatures, a direct consequence of global climate change, allow atmospheric rivers to carry significantly more moisture, increasing their destructive potential. Furthermore, altered jet stream patterns, another consequence of a warming planet, are steering these moisture-laden systems directly and with increasing frequency toward the California coast. What we are witnessing today is not a freak meteorological accident, a one-off anomaly. Instead, it is the chilling, tangible emergence of this predicted new normal, a future where extreme weather events become commonplace and their impacts more severe. This shift necessitates a complete overhaul of infrastructure planning, emergency response, and long-term land management strategies across the state. The psychological impact on California's residents cannot be overstated. It adds another layer of profound trauma to an already beleaguered populace. Many families currently in evacuation zones have already endured the soul-searing trauma of fleeing, raging wildfires, the terror of watching their homes and livelihoods threatened by flames. Now, they face the agonizing paradox of severe flooding from the very rain they once prayed for during years of parched drought. This profound emotional whiplash, from the scorching threat of fire to the drowning threat of flood, from extreme scarcity of water to extreme excess, takes an immense and cumulative toll on mental health, community resilience, and the very fabric of social cohesion. The sense of security, the fundamental trust in the predictability of their environment, is being eroded with each successive disaster, leaving a deep psychological scar. As Wednesday dawned, offering a brief, deceptive glimmer of light, the storm showed no signs of weakening its iron grip. In some mountain areas, the relentless rainfall rates continued to exceed a staggering 2 inches per hour, creating instant waterfalls where none existed before, carving new channels of destruction into the landscape. Urban storm drains, meticulously designed decades ago for what was then considered normal rainfall, were overwhelmed within minutes, their capacity utterly insufficient for this deluge. Streets, once merely conduits for traffic, transformed into raging torrents, carrying cars, dumpsters, and the detritus of daily life like children's toys caught in a furious current. Emergency services, the bedrock of societal response, report being utterly overwhelmed with an unprecedented volume of calls. Swift water rescue teams, trained for the most perilous conditions, are working frantically and with immense courage, yet the treacherous, rapidly changing conditions often make rescue attempts themselves life-threatening. The heartbreaking reality is that help, despite the valiant efforts, simply cannot reach everyone in time. Residents are being forced to make unimaginable, life-or-death decisions with incomplete information and in the face of rapidly escalating conditions, often without the luxury of time or certainty. Social media platforms, typically abuzz with holiday greetings, are now filled with desperate pleas for help, cries for assistance from stranded families, and shocking, visceral videos of destruction. Homes sliding terrifyingly off their foundations, cars buried in thick, viscous mud, massive boulders crashing catastrophically into neighborhoods, reshaping the very geography of communities. The long-term consequences of this Christmas catastrophe will stretch far beyond this week, embedding themselves deep into the state's infrastructure and its collective psyche. Flood damage does not simply disappear once the water recedes. Homes saturated with contaminated water often become total losses, their structures compromised, their interiors breeding grounds for mold and bacteria. Mold growth, a silent menace, creates long-lasting health hazards for residents who might try to return. Foundation damage, often not immediately visible, can render buildings structurally unsafe, necessitating costly and time-consuming engineering assessments. Many evacuees, dispossessed and displaced, may not be able to return home for months, or, tragically, even years, if ever. Transportation infrastructure, the arteries of a modern economy, faces years of arduous repair. Highways undermined by the sheer force of flooding may require full reconstruction, diverting resources and delaying commerce. Mountain roads, precariously carved into unstable slopes, could remain closed indefinitely, severing communities and impacting access to vital resources. Entire landscapes, both natural and man-made, are being permanently altered, scars etched into the earth. This Christmas catastrophe serves as a harsh, undeniable reminder that nature operates on its own relentless schedule, utterly indifferent to human holidays, travel plans, or cherished celebrations. As the storm continues its destructive march through Thursday, millions of Californians face a holiday season unlike any other in living memory. Instead of the expected joy, there is pervasive fear. Instead of celebration, there is the raw, primal imperative of survival. Instead of peace and tranquility, there is chaos and uncertainty. The indelible images of Los Angeles buried in mud and water will linger long after the storm passes, serving as a stark, urgent reminder of our profound vulnerability in a rapidly changing climate. The journey to recovery will undoubtedly take months, perhaps even years, demanding immense resources, collective will, and psychological fortitude. But for now, amidst the wreckage and the despair, survival is the only goal, the single overriding objective. This Christmas storm will not be the last. The patterns are clear, the scientific warnings have been issued with increasing urgency, and the future promises even more intense, more frequent, and more challenging climatic events ahead.